So the first thing we need to do is initiate our project. And what is a project? It's a Git repo and a package.json. So let's do that. I'm going to instantiate my local Git repo. And I'm going to create a README file, so that I have something to commit. And let's open this, README, hello world functions. Now I am going to do a git status to see what I am going to commit, and I can see that there are a few files that I don't want to commit. So I'm going to create a git ignore file. I'm going to add those two things. This is Mac cache and my IDE settings. I also know that I don't want my node modules to be added, and my dist folder, which I will use to put my build files into. Now, if I do a git status again, those should not appear anymore. Perfect, I only the git ignore and the readme, so let's commit that. There we go, and if I try to push, it's not going to work because I don't have a remote repo setup. There we go. So if I open GitHub and create a new repository with the name Netlify hello world functions tutorial, obviously you can call it whatever you want, and I don't want to initialize it because I am going to push to it the local repo that we just instantiated. And GitHub tells me how to do exactly that, so I am going to copy and paste those two commands. There we go. And now, if I refresh my remote repository, I can see my two files. Perfect. Next, we need to create our package.json that will keep track of the packages that comes with our project and define the scripts we can use to run, build, and test our function. So let's do that. I'm going to use npm init with the y flag, that is for yes, and it will skip the various questions for me. So let's hit enter, and you can see it answered all those questions with my defaults. Perfect, I now have a package.json file with the scripts, and for now, no dependencies. So our project is set up for now. Next, we want to link our project, that is our repository, to Netlify. To do that, I'm going to install the Netlify CLI. So npm install /g for global Netlify CLI. And the global flag means that Netlify CLI will be available as a global terminal command. So let me show you. If I type Netlify, it tells me every command that is available to us. And you can see there that we have the init command, which is exactly what we need to link our repository to Netlify. So let's do that. Let's run Netlify init, and it's going to log me in. There we go. And yes, I authorize. And now that it's done, it's going to ask me what I want to do with this. Do I want to link this to an existing site already configured on Netlify, or do I want to create and configure a new site, which is what I want because I don't have anything configured on the Netlify side right now. So let's do that. For site name, hello world functions tutorial. Perfect. And I only have one account, so that's perfect. My build command, and we'll talk about that a bit more later. Plus we'll override it locally, so you don't really need to mind this. And the directory to deploy, which I talked about earlier, that is the folder where you will put all your compiled files. And for me, that is indeed the dist folder, but then again, we will override this locally also. Because right now, those are set up in the Netlify admin, which I can show you. If I run a git push right now, it's going to deploy the site. So that is great. And if I now do Netlify open admin, it will open the Netlify admin for that website. So that is great. So now we have enabled continuous integration and deployment for this website. To be clear, as of right now, every time you push something, it's going to automatically trigger a deploy. And right now it fails, but it's okay. It's because we don't have a build command, so it can't find. So now it's time to have some fun and make the actual function. And the way that works is that for every file that you have inside your folder, there's a specific folder that we will specify later. So I'm going to store my functions into source functions, and I'm going to create a hello.js file. So that means that every file that I have here under my functions folder will be a Netlify function. Now, for the function to be recognized by Netlify, it must export a handler function. And that's basically what a cloud function is. It is a function that gets past the request. Netlify tends to label it the event, and Netlify also passes you the context, which is more identity related, and you probably don't really need to care about this right now. Now, if you run your function like this, it's going to wait and never resolve. That is because you need to return a promise with a status code, and probably a body. Victory! Yay! Our first cloud function is basically done. Now, that's cool and all, but you probably want to see it working locally so you can work on it. Netlify provides you with another command line utility called Netlify-lambda, which we can install again using npm I for install netlify-lambda, and I am going to add a d flag for dev, which means that this will get installed as a development package, which will then be tracked inside our package.json that we created earlier. Let's see that in a few seconds. And this Netlify Lambda utility will allow us to run our functions locally on a local server. It also adds Babel to the compilation. That means you can use most of the latest feature or add other pre-processing power that you might need. For example, I will show you in another video how to add TypeScript. So the install is done, and you can see right now that it was added as a local package. How do we use that? we installed it as a local package. That means that opposite to what we did with the Netlify CLI that was installed globally, if I run Netlify Lambda, it's going to fail because it doesn't know the command, because it's actually stored under my node modules. So you have two ways to run that. If you have yarn, you can run yarn Netlify-lambda, and if you have npm, which you obviously have, you can use npx Netlify-lambda. Both do the exact same. And let's see the commands that we have available. We have the serve command and the build command. And yeah, to be clear, what this does is go into the node modules and look for a package called Netlify Lambda and executes it. This package gives us two commands, the serve and the build command. Right now we care about the serve command, which takes a directory. The directory that it takes is the source of our functions. So our is stored in the source function. And if we run that, unless I make a mistake, oh yeah, I made a mistake. We want to serve this directory. There we go, and it's going to fail because Netlify requires a netlify.toml file to understand how to use your project. That is, how can it build your project? And right now we only have functions to build, but you could also have a website, a React app in this folder. So you would have a few other keys, but for functions, we only need to tell it the command. That is, how can I build your function? And where those functions built into. And we know that we want to export it to dist functions. So if I run serve again, it's going to work. Spin up a local server, which you can see here, running on the localhost 9000. So let's do that. I'm going to go to localhost 9000 and we get a nasty error, and that is because to access our function is called hello.js. So we actually need to go to /hello. And you can see this is what we return from our function, which is here. Even better, that is live reloading. So if I change something, it starts again. Let's refresh. Yay, 2! And a nasty error that you see here is because it was logging the error that we get on the home. There we go. So we now have our function running locally. Now that's great, but this is only running on my machine, and I would love to see it running live so that everybody can use it. To do that, if we take a look again at the Netlify Lambda command line, we have that build command. So I can actually run Netlify Lambda build, again passing it the source of my functions. And what it's going to do is compile my file, run it through Babel, and zip it for Netlify. So if I remove the dist folder right now, you can see it's going to create one again. There we go. Now, we told Netlify that to make our site run and for the deploy to succeed, it needs to run the yarn build command. But right now, if we go into our package.json, which is where Netlify looks for that command, we have nothing. So we have to just add this command. So when you run the build command, I want you to do this. And by the way, we can make our life easier at the same time by creating a start command, which is what people usually look for when they clone a new repo to start the project. And configuring to serve. This way, if we run yarn start, it's going to spin up the local server, which is way easier than having to remember all this. So our build command is configured. The only thing we need to do now to spin up a new deploy is commit and then push, because every time we push, a new deploy starts. So let's do that. I'm going to check that everything that is going to be committed is fine with me, and that is. You can see that when we ran Netlify init, it created that Netlify folder. It keeps track of your site ID, so keep that. I want to commit all of those, so let's git add that, git commit that. Let's go, and let's trigger the deploy using git push. And the Netlify CLI gives you the ability to open directly either the admin or the site, which you can check by doing Netlify open and checking the various options that the command has. And you can do that by calling Netlify, the command that you care about, at the -- help flag. And you can see that you can either open the admin or the website. Right now, we want to open the admin to check where the deploy is at. So let's do that. And it's going to open, well, the admin. I can see that my deploy failed. So let's check what happened. Now, why did this fail? If we look at the end, we get a build script returned non-zero exit code. That would mean that our build script failed, but it works locally. We tried that. This is something that bugged me for a few moments the first time I tried to record this tutorial. If we look a bit further, we see that yarn command is not found. And if you look at the Netlify documentation, they specify clearly that you can use either yarn or npm without any trouble. So why doesn't that work? Well, turns out it's my fault. I must have messed up or something when I installed my dependencies and used npm. That means that no yarn.log file was created, and I think Netlify uses this yarn.log file to install the dependency, which makes sense because it's the source of truth for your package version. And I don't have one right now, so it's not using yarn. So if I simply run yarn install, yarn is going to install every package and create that yarn.log file, right? And that keeps track of every package installed and its version and everything. So I am going to commit that. There we go. Trigger the deployment by simply pushing, which is magic. And because I'm lazy, I'm going to use the Netlify open command to see the deploy. Show me the deploys, and it's deploying, taking a bit of time, but that's perfectly fine. And the site is live. And so that's simply all that was missing for our deploy to work. That means that now our website is live. But if you open it, you're going to get a page not found. Remember, Netlify primarily allows you to deploy websites. We just have the ability to also add functions. So right now it's expecting a website and not finding it. That is because the functions in production are stored inside a .netlify subfolder. To then find your function, append the path to your function. And to get that, remember, we exported our function into a function subfolder, and the function we are trying to access is called hello. So, .netlify, because it's the convention Netlify chose, /functions, because our functions are exported inside a function subfolder, hello, because that's the name of the function we are trying to see. So now if I hit enter, it's working. So, quick recap of what we did. We're starting by initializing our project, that is creating a Git repo using git init. We registered it online by going to GitHub and creating the repository. Then we kept track of our packages and registered our script thanks to a package.json that we got using the npm init command. Then we enabled continuous integration using the netlify-cli command line and running netlify init, which links our repository to Netlify and triggers a deploy on every push. Then we created our function, told Netlify how to find it and build it, and then we just pushed our changes to GitHub, which triggers a deployment, and enjoy the results. That's it, folks. Your feedback would be very much appreciated. If you liked it, please comment and subscribe. Next video will be about more advanced functions, that is asynchronous functions, calling external APIs, and finding out a bit more about what this event thing is. Thank you very much for watching and see you soon.